Mystara has no gods. Mystara needs no gods. You'll hear those words more than once if you're a massive fan of the setting. It's become a source of pride that Mystara's deities are immortals, which serve the same purpose but have mechanical and background differences. These elements were discussed in canon throughout various second edition books and the writings of later Mystara contributors. The immortals and the gods often have less than friendly rivalries due to how they deal with faith and, more importantly, their followers' souls. What makes it uncomfortable is when someone asks their DM if Mystara doesn't have gods, where did Odin, Thor, Loki, and the rest come from? Cue this video as I'm breaking down the Northern Pantheon, why they aren't the Aesir, and applying plot spackle where needed. I'm Mr. Welch, and lo there, do I see my father. The origins of the Pantheon comes from the Northern Reaches Gazetteer written by Aaron Alston. This isn't the only time we've had bleed over from established characters from other settings, as we had Orcus and Demogorgon in the Immortals box set, though they weren't the archdemons from Manual of the Plains, they were just really powerful demons. Odin, Thor, Hel, Loki, Foretta, Frey, and Freya make up the entirety of the Pantheon, though the Northmen also worship other immortals. Proteus, in the form of the Spooming Nuga, has a significant following in the region, but he's not allied with Odin and his crew, nor does Proteus care. He's all about the oceans and doesn't give a flip about a bunch of landlubbers. The Northerners also have the Norns, but Urd and Verthandi have disappeared, leaving only Skuld. The Northerners worship her, but she's a part-time member of the Pantheon, as she's gone a bit loopy with the loss of her fellow Norns. Now comes the unfun part, explaining the differences between the Odins, the Hels, the Thors, the Lokis, and the rest, who have counterparts in the gods. I'm pulling the information from where I could find it, but mostly the Codex Immortalis, the Religions of Mystara, the Northern Reaches Gazetteer, Wrath of the Immortals, and the Great Barrier video I made. While the Immortals box set came out before this, it mentions very few Immortals, and almost all of them were retconned later into their current form. Use as much of this video as you want. We are dealing with continuity problems, and there will be disagreements between the sources. To summarize the Great Barrier very briefly, a long time ago the gods got into a squabble with the primordials, and things got a little out of control with mass genocide, the destruction of entire planets, and death on a scale that was beyond mortal comprehension. So more of a tiff then. The old ones looked at all the lesser deities acting more like obnoxious versions of Philadelphia Eagles fans and decided they'd have enough. They created the barrier to keep the gods out and let the mortals deal with the problems on their own. The issue was the barrier took a while to form enough to do its task, and by that time the gods had noticed the creation of it, but they couldn't get through. Their servants and their avatars could, though. Cue Odin and Hel sending mortal versions of themselves to try to grab as many followers as they could to subvert the efforts of the old ones. Only it didn't work out that way. The avatars made it through, but quickly realized that the barrier cut them off from their god forms. They were on their own. They couldn't use their divine magic, communicate with their more powerful versions, and were stuck on a forming planet without any help. They were still formidable, they were the avatar of gods, but now they were separate versions from those very same gods. Their original plan proved impossible, but that didn't stop them from trying to gain power by playing by the new rules. That's when they discovered mortals in Mystara space reincarnated rather than going to the heavens and hells. And now they were very mortal. After a few reincarnations of their own, both of them eventually ascended to immortality. That's when they discovered that God Odin and God Hel were still around and thought the avatars were long dead. This became a major rivalry between the god and immortal versions for a while, at least with Odin, but those feelings have eased over the ages. Both immortals were some of the first in Mystara, and possibly the first humans. They claim not to remember their origins, but considering they are the former avatar of gods, it's best they don't tell the truth. Since immortal, they adapted to the nuances of becoming Mystaran deities. They weren't restricted to a single region or even a single domain like gods are. They could appear to anyone as another immortal and spread their influence all over the globe. Hel took on 5 additional personas to increase her worship. Odin one-upped everyone by assuming a whopping 11 more personas. They each became the hierarch of their spheres, Odin for thought and Hel for entropy. Both of these make up the majority of the information given to us on the Aesir. But if I was just talking about those, it would be boring. But don't worry.
It's alright, little brother. There are more.
Odin is the first of the Northern Immortals and the head of the Pantheon. He's also one of the busiest immortals in Mystara, as no one else approaches his 12 personas. He's worshipped on 3 continents, including the Hollow World and the Savage Coast. He's the patron of the North, as well as nobility, wise leadership, and some weather-related domains. He differs from God Odin by hand-selecting his Pantheon members rather than just family members. It makes sense since immortals are rarely related to other immortals by blood. Well, except for Frey and Freya, but we're getting to those quick. He keeps the trappings of God Odin and has his own agenda. Nobody knows of his actual ascendancy. He just keeps with the origin story of the god to confuse people about his past, especially across the multiverse. While he appreciates wisdom, his sworn duty is to find people capable of greater leadership and help them rise in power to rule over the mortal realms. He doesn't want hermits as followers. He wants kings and knights to serve him. He has a deep interest in the multiverse and is one of the best-traveled immortals. His relations with God Odin have warmed considerably since the Great Barrier, as both deities recognize the wisdom in each other's teachings. While they keep up with similar appearances, they are different creatures. God Odin is happy to have someone who shares his beliefs in the realms that he can't personally enter. Immortal Odin appreciates that his counterpart lacks the pride and greed that consumes many other gods. Thor's real name is Donar. He was a powerful Haldonic warrior before he became an immortal. Odin invited him into the Aesir, where he took on Thor's persona. Thor's actual patron was Ixion, and he is still known by many of his worshippers as Donar. He's also known by his various personas across the Isle of Dawn, Hollow World, and even parts of Alphatia. He is the patron of war. The words thunder and lightning appear nowhere in his biography. He has very little in common with the god of the same name, though he is friendly and outgoing and he doesn't like being teased. Thor is Donar's persona, something that he will admit to his allies when they first encounter it. He favors honorable fighters and has little love for those who exist just for slaughter. He has sponsored several other immortal patrons of war, and while they are seen as part of the Aesir, they have little presence in the northern lands unless needed in an emergency. Frey was originally Freydar from the Heldonic freeholds. Now he is the patron of fertility, friendship, and tactics. His story is inseparable from his sister Fredara, as they were possibly the only siblings to pursue and achieve immortality together. Odin guided them to help their fellow northerners where he could, and Frey served his party as diplomat and problem solver. He helped push humanoid invaders back to Ethengar, found the Tree of Ig, an artifact sacred to Odin, and helped survivors of the Glantrian apocalypse. He is popular with the common folk of the Reaches as he proposes using wisdom and diplomacy to solve problems before resorting to violence. He is also worshipped in various forms in the Hollow World and Savage Coast. Freya, as mentioned, was Fredara in her mortal life. She shares much of the same experiences her brother had as they adventured together as often as possible. She is the patron of love, beauty, family, fertility, as well as runic prophecy and the northern afterlife. She's in charge of reincarnating worthy souls as fast as possible. Freya is one of the most popular of the northern immortals, especially among women. She bore 2 daughters as a mortal, and many believe that the father was Odin in a mortal guise. Both her daughters serve her in her palace on her home plane now. Go find the rules for demigods if you want to use them. Those rules do exist, but there's not much meat regarding them. Freya is one of the most beautiful creatures in the multiverse, but she doesn't use it to her advantage. She thinks using her appearance to manipulate people is beneath her, and she passes this belief down to her followers. Appearance means nothing, it's what you do that counts. Foretta was named Ruthin in his mortal form, and he is the patron immortal of Vestland, as well as law, justice, and loyalty. And he's actually the first northern immortal to appear in print with the Curse of Xanathon book. He was an early clan chief in what would become Vestland, and he united the kingdom under his control by bringing in all the various jarls and chiefs through diplomacy. He created the nation's first set of laws and brought peace to the region. He ascended with the patronage of Terra, then watched in horror as the Nithians crushed and conquered his people. When they vanished, Aslan took control of the Northern Reaches, and Foretta had to act. Manifesting as an advisor to King Otar, he guided his people to push out the Aslan invaders. Now Foretta is content to watch over his people, sending them guidance when necessary. He is a fair-minded immortal whose interests are focused on Vestland, though small cults devoted to him are present in other northern nations. Skuld is an enigma, wrapped up in a mystery, sautéed with a conundrum, with a side of Neapolitan ice cream if you replaced the chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry with omniscience, madness, and audacity. She is the last remaining member of the Norns, and aside from Nyx, she's the only member of the sphere of entropy that isn't evil. She represents the crone aspect of the Norns, appearing as an ancient emaciated woman dressed in threadbare black rags. The previous members were Urd, who represented law, and Verthandi, who was chaotic. Urd disappeared with the Great Rain of Fire. Verthandi disappeared recently due to the events of Wrath of the Immortals, or the War on All Sides, depending on the timeline. Now only Skuld remains, and her mind seems shattered by the loss of her sisters. They translated her rantings. Without them, she seems to scream out random prophecies with no context. However, when she wants to be perfectly clear, she can speak with total clarity. This is rare, and she only does it as a threat, often to another deity who is far more powerful than her. Or so it seems, because when she gave lip to an overgod, he backed off quickly. Loki was a fire wizard who lived centuries after the fall of Blackmoor. Nobody remembers his real name, and he's lied about it so many times it's possible he doesn't either. He has one purpose in life: to jack with people. His passion is leading people on, betraying them, and watching them deal with the consequences. He even did this to his immortal patron, letting Rathanos sponsor him, only to ditch the fiery deity for Thanatos at the last second. He got his immortality. Then he told Thanatos to bugger off because he got a job with Hel. He has numerous personas and believes everyone is selfish and evil at heart. He likes to act like he is ready to be redeemed, only to try to corrupt his savior. You would think people would start to catch on, but he changes his identity and appearance pretty often, even posing as other immortals, which is strictly forbidden. He runs away from trouble and refuses to be punished, preferring to hide behind Hel to avoid retribution. Hel joins the Northern pantheon more to counter Odin than to support the people there. She agrees with him that a great change is coming in the world, but disagrees with him on how to handle it. Odin wants to prevent the world's end and help the survivors rebuild. Hel prefers to let it happen and recreate the world as one of chaos, with her in charge, of course. She is the patron of reincarnation and works to ensure that everyone is given another chance at life after they die. Of course, her followers get priority, which is one of the reasons why she's accepted a task that most everyone else finds tedious. She's an opportunist, always ready to take somebody's idea and improve upon it. Idris created the Beastman race. Hel took them, shaped them, and gave them purpose. She's one of the few immortals willing to take on gods, and has hinted at killing and replacing gods in other parts of the multiverse. If true, this would create a crisis in the heavens that would rival the Dawn War. If one type of deity discovered how to replace another and steal their followers, worlds would burn. Not that Hel cares as long as she gets what she wants. She also doesn't get along with her god version at all. God Hel finds the immortal treacherous and power-hungry. Immortal Hel finds her god version stuck in her ways and wasting the power that she possesses. Granted, that's a common belief among immortals regarding gods, but Hel takes that belief up to 11. That's the Northern Pantheon. There's a hint that other immortals have tried to take on elements of the Aesir, such as Ixion as Tyr and Terra as Frigga, but there's no information about that at all, and that concept seems to be dropped. The immortals that share the names of the gods only applies to Odin and Hel. Everyone else has another name, they're just acting out roles that Odin suggested they take. Immortal Thor and God Thor have probably never met, and even if they did, they would think their names are just a funny coincidence. Next week, I'm looking at some of the biggest feuds in Mystara, a list of the people, groups, and nations who will not stop until the other is utterly destroyed. Until then, there will be blood.